I enjoy that the original coconut crab scheme has become popular enough that people complain it is overused. At the same time, I'm happy to provide guidance on adapting it to other colors. Today I'm going to be addressing one of the most popular requests, which is the Leviathan scheme. I've seen a couple of people simply swap out the orange and brown for purple and black, using a black all-over wash and otherwise maintaining the same technique, and this gives a pretty good effect. But for this tutorial, I'm going to go in a different direction, changing up some of the techniques I've demonstrated in prior videos and explaining my reasoning. I'm starting with a termagant that I've primed white, and the first thing I want is to address the exoskeleton. The Games Workshop Studio scheme has a pinkish tone in the recesses, so I mix equal parts Army Painter Red Tone, Army Painter Quick Shade Wash Mixing Medium, and water, and apply this to everything except the carapace blades. In retrospect, I could have made this mix a little stronger for deeper shading, but try for yourself and decide. Once that's dry, the termagant is a dull pink. I'm now going to use pure red tone and apply it to the joints and vents to pick them out a little more strongly. I'm now going to brighten the model back up by dry brushing white. This is going to pick out raised areas and smooth out the wash step. As a general rule, I like to use at least 2 steps when speed painting. That could be 2 layers of wash, or a manual highlight and a wash, or a wash and a dry brush. I find that 2 layers provides a sufficient level of definition for my tastes. Next, it's time for the claws, hooves, and gun, all in red tone. Note that the original Leviathan scheme in 4th edition did not paint the guns any differently from the creatures they're bonded to, so you can always leave it off the gun to look more integrated into the termagant. But this is the more popular style, so I'm covering the gun too. Once that's dry, it really needs another layer to solidify the color. You may notice I'm deliberately applying it very heavily, but still pulling it off is needed to prevent pooling. The more you practice washing, the easier you'll find it to add or remove a wash just based on how much is already on your brush. Alright, so now it's on to the carapace. I've picked out 3 colors for this: Viejo model color blue-violet, violet, and black. I'll start by blocking in the carapace in blue-violet. Next, I cover the inner 2/3 of each carapace plate in violet, leaving blue-violet around the edges. I try to keep the shapes irregular, as it will help the patterning to look natural. And lastly, I cover the inner 1/3 of each plate in black. Now it's time for the patterning. I start with blue-violet, thin it out, and start applying dots to the transition between blue-violet and violet. I try to focus the dots around the transition with fewer dots the farther away from the transition line I go. Once that's done, I switch to violet and apply dots to the transitions between violet and the other 2 colors. This is really defining the bulk of the patterning. And then with black I do the same thing, which I forgot to record. After those are done, I go back with blue-violet to add some small dots to larger spots of violet on the black carapace areas. This helps to further intermingle the colors and break up the patterns. Okay, now for highlighting. I mix equal parts white and black and use this to carefully highlight the black parts of the carapace. Yes, I certainly could just use gray, but for the sake of simplicity, my highlights are all going to be the base color mixed with white. So with that done, I now mix violet and white and highlight the violet edges of the carapace. And lastly, I mix blue, violet, and white and highlight the outermost edges. Note that normally in the coconut crab scheme this would all be white along the edge and I don't highlight it, but here I'm not using any pure white on the carapace, so I have to highlight it manually. The carapace still isn't shaded, so I'll take Army Painter Dark Tone, thin it just a little, maybe 3:1, and carefully paint it into the recesses between each carapace plate for definition. And lastly, I'll use gold and yellow to pick out the eyes. If I make a mistake here, which is pretty common, I have a damp brush on standby to scrub off any wayward yellow. After this, it's just varnish and I'm done. So here's the final result, a more traditional take on the Leviathan scheme, but livened up a bit with dot patterning and optimized through my usual speed painting techniques. Remember, the coconut crab patterning isn't just one brown and orange color scheme, it's a technique, and I highly encourage you to experiment and find a color scheme that really speaks to you. Of course, if you like this tutorial, you could crank out an army in this style pretty quickly. Well, that's all for today, so as always, thanks for watching.